संसार दावा नलली ढलोका त्राणय कारुण्य घना घना त्वं प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणनवस्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् महाप्रभु की तन नृत्य गीता वादित्र माद्यान मनसोर सेना महाप्रभु की तन नृत्य गीता वादित्र माद्यान मनसोर रोमांचकंपा सुतरंग भाजो वंदे गुरु श्री चरणारविंदम रोमांचकंपा सुतरंग भाजो श्री विग्रहाराधन नित्य नाना श्रृंगार तन्मन्दिरमर्जनादौ श्री विग्रहाराधन नित्य नाना श्रृंगार तन्मन्दिरमर्जनादौ गतया दीप्ति युक्तश्च भक्तं च न्युञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं युक्तश्च भक्तं च न्युञ्जतोऽपि श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री चतुर्विधा श्री भगवत् प्रसादो न तृप्तां हरिभक्त संघा चतुर्विधा श्री कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् श्री राधिका माधवयोरपार माधुर्य लीला गुणरूप नाम्ना माधवयोरपार लीला नाम्ना प्रतीक्षणा स्वादनलोलुपास्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं प्रतीक्षण वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं निकुञ्ज भक्ति केली सीधै व्यायालिभिर्युक्ते अपेक्षणीयानि कुञ्जयूनो तत्रात्रिदाक्षादतिवल्लभास्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं ददाति साक्षाद्धरित्वेना समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तस्तथा भावत एव साध्भिः साक्षाद्धरित्वेना किन्तु प्रभुर्य प्रिय एव तस्मै वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् प्रिय एव तस्मै वन्दे गुरु श्री यस्य प्रसादा भगवत् प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादा न गति कुतोऽपि यस्य प्रसादा यस्य प्रसादा भगवत् प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादा न गति कुतोऽपि यस्य ध्यायन्तु वंस्तस्य यशस्त्रीसन्ध्या वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं 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 वन्दे गुरु श्री नाम ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामीति नामिने नामो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौर भक्त वृंद जय चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौर हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे जयो राधा नील माधव राधा नील माधव राधे जय माधव राधे जयो जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रा जयो जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रा सीताराम जयो लक्ष्मण हनुमान सीताराम निताय गौरांग गौर हरे निताय गौरांग निताय गौरांग निताय गौरांग गौर हरे जयो जयो प्रभुपा 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 जयो जयो प्रभुपा जयो 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 गुरुदेव 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 जयो जयो गुरुदेव जय जयो गुरुदेव जयो जयो गुरुदेव निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल निताय हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल
Pada Paramahamsa Parvatikaracharya Ashtota Shata Shishma Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridasa Ki Jai Premise Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Shri Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Devi, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees. Gaura Pramanande, Hari Hari Bo.
Namaste Narasimhaya Namaste Narasimhaya Narasimhaya Praladadadayine Hiranyakashipurvakshaha Shrilatam kanakhalaye Tam kanakhalaye Ito narasimho parato narasimho Narasimho Pairato Narasimho Yato Yato Yang Mitato Narasimho Yato Yang Mitato Narasimho Dahe Narasimho Hrudaye Narasimho He Narasimho Hrudaye Narasimho Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapade Simhamadim संप्रपदे तव कर कमलवरे नाखा अद्भुत श्रृंगार दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवद्रिता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तव कर मलभरे नाखा अद्भुत श्रृंगार दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवद्रिता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवद्रिता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवद्रिता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज ओ प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज निताय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव भक्ति विघ्न विनाशक लक्ष्मी नरसिम्हा भगवान की जय। भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो यही अभिलाषी राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो यही अभिलाषी जे तुम्हारा शरण लो करा वंश पूर्ण हो कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोराए आबिलास बिलास कुंज दियो वास नायने हेरिबो सदा जुगल रूपरासी ये निवेदन दरो सखी अनुजात करो सेवाधिकारो दियो कोरो निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दासे को ये दीना मोरा होय श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सादायन बासी श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदायन बासी यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यानि कानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यानि कानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यानि कानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यानि कानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे जय वृंदा देवी जय श्री हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Ora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Whoever takes shelter of you has wish fulfilled. Bestow mercy upon him and make him a resident of Vrindavana. My desire that you always also grant me a residence in the precious groves of Shiv and Vrindavana town. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me follow our cow dancer's virtue. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen lowly son of Krishna, I pray. May I always swim in the love to Radha and Govind. Shri Chaitanya Shastakam ki jai. Cheto Tarpana Marjanam Bhava Mahatavakni Sarvapanam Shriya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Pudivardhanam Pratipatam Purnarmita Sadhanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahudhani Cha Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smaranena Kalaha Etadeshi Dava Kripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durudevami Desham Yaha Janina Nuragaha Trinatapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sashnuna Amanina Manatena Kirtanya Sada Harihi Na Thanam Na Chanam Na Sundarim Kabitamba Jagadishakamaye Mama Jammani Jamanishvare Pavata Bhaktir Haituti Toi Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitamam Dishame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Saturi Satesham Vichintaya Nayanam Galadashru Dharaya Vadanam Kadgadharudaya Gira Pulakanichtam Vapurkada Tavanama Grahane Bhavishati Yugaitam Nimishena Chakshusha Prarisha Itam Shunya Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahe Name Ashri Shava Padratam Pinnasumam Adarshana Marmhatam Karotuva Yatha Tatha Va Vidathatu Lampato Matprananatha Susa Eva Na Paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Shastakam Ki Jai. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is a prime benediction to humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases ocean transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to human beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have vested all your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, our kindness enables us easily approach you by your holy name, but I am so unfortunate and have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more taller than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Samaritananda, I am an eternal servitor, yet somehow I have fallen into this ocean, birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of Adam's at lotus feet. O my Lord, while my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant the holy name, while my voice choke up and with hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your name. O Govinda, feeling of separation may consider the moment to be like a millennium. Tears are flowing from eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Shastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 fences in the matter of chanting full names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme devotees who have dedicated their lives for the propagation of the name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme Vedic literature or to assume the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the name of the Lord. 7. To commit simple activity and strength to chant the holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious retreats activities often the Vedas as spiritual activities, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct a faithful person about the glory of the holy name. 10. To not have complete faith in chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success. Krishna, Prema. Now let us offer most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of our Krishna Gayatri, so that everyone can their full compassion fall into the same soul. Shri Mangala Charna Prayas ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swabham Dantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachaditesha Tarini Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pisthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namini Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Chula Premadya Shri Rupa Nuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karana Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Siddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipalambara Sambodhe Padam Bodhete Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Virayate Gaura Virbhava Bhume Swam Nirdeshata Janapriya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jaganathaya Te Namaha Vancha Kalpatarupesha Kripa Sindhu Bhevasha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratise Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakham Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jaitam Surato Pangor Mamamanda Matergati Masarvasva Padambo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vrindarana Kalpa Jumadaha Simaranagara Singhasanasko Simaratha Shira Govinda Devo Prishtaditi Sela Manos Marami Simarasarasaranti Vamsi Vata Tatasita Karsham Venu Soner Gopir Gopinatha Shriyetsuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sade Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Brahma Samhita ki jai. Swara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhi Govinda Sarva Karna Karanam Chentamini Prakara Satma Sakalpa Vriksha Laksa Vrite Susurabira Vipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Sata Sambrahma Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Pranandam Arvinda Dalayataksam Samasitam Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visesha Sobam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Sadvana Madhvamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranay Keli Kalavilasam Shamam Chibangala Hita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Jagam Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsada Sampragam Yo Vayo Ratapi Manasomani Pungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Soda Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yes Chakti Rasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diomana Jastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistavanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bhistabirya Eva Nijarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhutto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistana Navatar Makarod Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pamam Yo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti Kotishvasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Jaygunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sadva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasuriya Praninam Pativalam Smaratam Upetya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Maheswari Dama Sute Sutesu Tete Prabhavini Jaya Vitascha Yena Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shististati Palaya Sadhava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Hichana Rupam Vyasya Chitestate Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yatada Divikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasam Bhutam Apitata Samapaiti Karyat Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Devi Hita Santanam Abhyabhetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samanu Dharma Yastadri Geva Hicha Vishnu Tayavivate Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanta Satroma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalambya Param Samurtim Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasit Kalamata Avalambya Jivante Loma Vilaja Jagadanda Data Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kalabhisesu Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalesha Nijesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Abitat Pratatra Pramaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanu Karta Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yadada Balaviyugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dvande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihantana Malvasya Jagatriyasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Ganamambu Marudisascha Kala Tatarpam Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Amcha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Sesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutras Tapamsi Brahma Dikita Patagava Teyasta Jivaha Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakita Prabhava Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yastindra Gopamata Vendra Mahosva Karma Bandhan Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nilahati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Koda Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti Vatsaya Moha Guru Gora Visevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisintana Mapurete Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Chiak Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Dumabu Mischintamani Ganama Itoyam Amritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanama Pivam Sipriyasaki Chidanantam Joti Parama Pita Satvas Aswadyam Abicha Sayatra Shiradi Bihisravidi Shirabi Biasta Sumahan Nemesa Dakyova Vajitina Hiyatra Bisamaya Bajay Sweta Dibam Tamaham Ihagolakam Itiam Vidantas Tesan Takshati Vrachara Katipaye Shri Guru Vastika prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is mellowing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engaged his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada, he is satisfied. Or from my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. Spiritual masters always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored as much the Supreme Lord, because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet, such a spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5. We're going to do verse 42 again. Yaschadaya Shrutavatya Chabakya Samridyamane Hridaye Vadaya Gyanena Vairagya Balena Dira Vrajam Tate Angrit Saroja Pitam. Yet that which Shradaya, by eagerness, Shrutavatya, simply by hearing, Cha, also, Bhaktya, in devotion, Samrij Yamane, being cleansed, Hirdaye, in the heart, Avadaya, meditation, Jnanena, by knowledge, Vairagya, detachment, Balena, by the strength of, Dira, the pacified, Rajema, must go to, Tat, that, Te, your, Angri, feet, Saroja Pitam, lotus sanctuary. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Simply by hearing about your lotus feet. Now these are prayers by the demigods, right? So you can see that they're very exalted personalities. Simply by hearing about your lotus feet, so your means Krishna's lotus feet, with eagerness and devotion, and by meditating upon them within the heart, one at once becomes enlightened with knowledge, and on the strength of detachment, one becomes pacified. We must therefore take shelter of the sanctuary of your lotus feet. And this is an extremely, extremely, extremely profound verse, and extremely, extremely, super extremely purport by Srila Prabhupada. If we understand, this one verse and this purport, we can be liberated from the cycle of birth and death and go back to Godhead. That's how powerful this verse is. Basically, Krishna, the demigods, are confirming what we've heard already many times, simply by hearing about Krishna's lotus feet, in other words, about Krishna, with eagerness and devotion. Eagerness means you can't wait to come to the class every morning. In other words, it's the high point of the day. Eagerness and what? Devotion. So you have faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And your whole focus in life is to render service to the Lord. So someone in that state of mind is a highly liberated person already. So simply by hearing about your lotus feet, O Krishna, with eagerness and devotion, and by meditating upon them within the heart, that means the emotions that one has in the heart are not mixed with, oh, I want some sense gratification. Oh, I want to make some more money. Oh, I want this, I want that. No. Meditating upon Krishna's lotus feet within the heart. In other words, the mind and the heart are both focused on Krishna. The mind is not focused on mundane knowledge, mundane news, and mundane this and mundane that. And the heart is not hankering for sense gratification. It's hankering for Krishna. Right? One at once becomes enlightened with knowledge. And on the strength of detachment, one becomes pacified. In other words, you become very peaceful because you develop knowledge and detachment. Detachment from what? Detachment from the body, detachment from mundane family life and mundane social life and mundane traveling and sightseeing and mundane this and mundane that. Completely free of all those things. Then you become very peaceful internally. We must therefore take shelter of the sanctuary of your lotus feet. So the lotus feet of Krishna are sacred. It's a sanctuary. It's like the temple. Right? Okay, so purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The miracles of meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord with eagerness and devotion are so great that no other process can compare to it. Just see what Prabhupada is saying here. And he knows, right? He knows much better than we do because this is what he has done. He's saying the miracles, it doesn't say the miracle, the miracles. There are many miracles of meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord with eagerness and devotion are so great that no other process can compare to it. That's an amazing statement. The minds of materialistic persons are so disturbed that it is almost impossible for them to search after the supreme truth by personal regulative endeavors. So the key word there is regulative. Regulative means you're regulated to do it every day and on a minute by minute, hour by hour process. In other words, you are organizing your life in such a way that you're giving maximum time to Krishna consciousness. That's even though you might have to work 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, have to sleep maybe 6 hours, so 10 and 6 is 16, right? And then there's some travel, and then there's maybe an hour or two you have to work overtime at night. So that leaves you 4 hours now. Now, if you waste those 4 hours on the internet or talking on the phone or eating out, that's a big endeavor. That'll take hours. No, you eliminate all that stuff. So that means you have 4 hours, even though you're working 10 hours. you're sleeping 6 hours, and you're doing this and that 4 hours. You still have 4 hours in a day. So the devotee very carefully uh, relishes those 4 hours where you can completely focus on Krishna. Okay? So the miracles of meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord with eagerness and devotion are so great that no other process can compare to it. The minds of materialistic persons are so disturbed that it is almost impossible for them to search after the supreme truth by personal regulative endeavors. It's almost impossible. You know, just like uh, school. By the time you get to high school, it's almost impossible for the kids to meditate on Krishna. Almost impossible. They're so involved in, like last night, after going to school, then they have 6 hours of going, hurrah, hoo, ah, screaming at the football game or whatever game it was last night, right? And there must have been 1,000 kids doing that and screaming at the top of their lungs, ah, woo, you know. So this is what happens in high school. It begins to teach you not to have time for Krishna, just to have time for nonsense, hearing mundane speculative knowledge, and going to mundane types of entertainment, such as a football game, where they take a ball and they carry it one way, and some people tackle them, and then they carry it the other way, and some people tackle them, and going back and forth with the ball, right? So instead of chanting Hare Krishna, they're going ball, 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 ball. See, and it's all nonsense. The same thing with basketball. The same thing with football. The same thing with soccer. The same thing with baseball. There's always a ball, right? And it's got to go over a end line, or it's got to go into a basket, or it's got to go over the fence or something like that. There's always a ball, right? So you see how this is crazy. This is like purposely organized to take your mind away from Krishna. And that's why Prabhupada says that brahmacharis should not engage in frivolous activities. This is actually frivolous activity. Last night was an example of frivolous activity. So are we going to accept this when the majority of people don't accept it? That's the question. To be or not to be, that is the question, as Shakespeare said. Either to be Krishna conscious or not to be Krishna conscious, that is the question. So we have to make that decision. But we have to have some, let's say, proof that that is right. What is the proof that the miracles of meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord with eagerness and devotion are so great that no other process can compare to it? Well, we got to have some kind of validation that this is true, because someone said, well, wait a minute, I had a great time last night. I was screaming at the top of my voice for this team to win or that team to win, and it was so much fun. We were jumping up and down, and we were doing this and that, and we wasted 6 hours of our life for doing nonsense, but it was fun nonsense. Well, anything that wastes even a minute of life is not fun. It's serious. It means that we're that much closer to dying, and we wasted that time. Okay, so the minds of materialistic persons are so disturbed that it is almost impossible for them to search after the supreme truth by personal regulative endeavors. Notice the word personal, meaning you have to organize yourself to be regulated. The difference between a civilized person and an uncivilized person is the civilized person is regulated, personally regulated. In other words, he doesn't need anyone else to regulate him. He personally regulates himself for making spiritual advancement. But you can personally regulate yourself to doing nonsense, or you can. But usually, nonsense is unregulated activity, right? It's just like the internet. The internet is actually unregulated activity. Why? Because you go on the internet to look up something like the definition of a word, and all of a sudden there's a pop-up, and you click on the pop-up, and now you're going in a different direction, right? And then you go there for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then there's another pop-up, now you're going in another direction. So to find the definition of a word, you might spend 2 hours, pop up here, pop up there. See? So we see that these are instruments of mass distraction. There's instruments of mass destruction, there's instruments of mass distraction, and there's instruments of mass there's instruments of mass yeah. In other words, mass destruction, mass distraction, mass deception. There's also instruments of mass deception, and so on. There are many instruments of things that are not good for you. So therefore, we have to be regulated for nectar, rather than being regulated for distraction or destruction or dissipation or whatever. Okay, so it says, but even such materialistic men, with a little eagerness for hearing about the transcendental name, fame, qualities, etc., can surpass all other methods of attaining knowledge and detachment. There are other methods, but the hearing method is the one that's highly recommended, not only highly recommended, uniquely recommended by Lord Chaitanya and the Acharyas and Krishna. The conditioned soul is attached to the bodily conception of the self, and therefore he is in ignorance. So when we're attached to the bodily conception of the self, we're no longer being inspired by Krishna's instructions. We are no longer personally controlling our activities. We're being controlled by the body. It's the body that's controlling us, not our soul. At that point, we're completely controlled by the body, and the body, including the mind and the intelligence, that we've lost control of them. And one perfect example of that is when a person is addicted to something like coffee or tea or marijuana or heroin or cocaine or fentanyl. As soon as a person gets addicted to something, they're not in control anymore, either personally. And the Lord, they ignore the Lord, so the Lord's not controlling them. So they're walking around doing things completely controlled by the body. And the body becomes the resting place or the accumulated deception of lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and envy. So we're not in control at all. So therefore it says, but even such materialistic men with a little eagerness for hearing about the transcendental name, fame, qualities, etc., can surpass all other methods of attaining knowledge and detachment. All the other methods, right? Studying this, studying that, it's all a waste of time. This is the real thing that we should study. Right? The conditioned soul is attached to the bodily conception of the self, and therefore he is in ignorance. See, as soon as we're attached to the bodily conception of the self, I am this body. I am Telangana, I am Andhra, I am Bengali, I am Bangladeshi, I am this, I am that. All based on the body. Therefore, he is in ignorance. Culture of self-knowledge can bring about detachment from material affection, and without such detachment, there is no meaning to knowledge. So material affection, all the I love yous, sometimes people are leaving the house and the person in the house says, I love you. And then the person leaves, oh, I love you, right? And then the person that's leaving the house, then they go and find another person to love. And the person in the house is on the internet looking for someone else to love. So all these I love yous is completely nonsense. I love you doesn't mean anything, but because you cannot really love anyone unless you love Krishna. Then you can begin to love. But I lust you. That's it should be. I lust you. I lust you. I lust you. That's the real meaning of the I love you. Uh, so someone says, "Oh, this is so cynical. What do you mean? You're making so much fun of all these people." Yes, it's not cynical. It's a tragedy that people are completely controlled by the body. They're not in control themselves. They're controlled by the body. This is strange, but it's not when you understand that false attachment to the body means that you become under the control of this temporary material body that's always changing. So, therefore, the most stubborn attachment for material enjoyment is sex life. Whoa. One who is attached to sex life is to be understood as devoid of knowledge. Knowledge must be followed by detachment. That is the way of self-realization. So here's the core part of this whole, let's say, purport. The real reason why we're in this world is because of attraction to sex. Now, some people say, "Oh no, I'm not attached at all to sex," blah blah blah. That's nonsense. Everybody has this weakness. We spoke about the weakness of the heart, right? There are two weaknesses of the heart. The first weakness is the desire to control, dominate, and enjoy material nature, which includes people, to dominate them and enjoy them, or use them as a source of enjoyment. And the second weakness is once we do that, whatever we acquire, we become attached to it. It can be people, it can be things, cars and houses and property and prestige and this and that. So these are two weaknesses of the heart. Rather than becoming, desiring to be completely dedicated to Krishna, we become completely dedicated to controlling nature and people. Rather than being attached to material things that we have acquired by dominating nature and people, we should be attached to Krishna and serving the Lord with love and devotion. So you see, attachment is there, but it's with domination for exploitation. Whereas in Krishna consciousness, attachment is there, but it's with surrender and service and love. There's a huge difference between the two. And until we understand that difference, we remain completely controlled by the body. We're not in control ourselves. So this is explained much more in detail. Now I'm going to go through a list of it. Prabhupada says in 5th chapter, 21st verse of Bhagavad Gita, the test of spiritual realization is when one can work without sex. The test of spiritual realization is when one works without sex. And then Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 3rd chapter, 19th verse, Prabhupada writes, sex is meant for sucking one's own blood. Now, what does that mean, sucking one's own blood? Because it takes approximately 2 pounds of food to make 1 drop of blood. And it takes about 40 or more drops of blood to make 1 drop of semen. Now, when people waste, when in the case of men it's semen, in the case of women it's vaginal discharges, when men or women waste these vital fluids, they're actually sucking their own blood. Just like the camel. The camel will eat thorny bushes. And why does he like to eat thorny bushes? Because when he chews them, it cuts his tongue somewhat, and then he tastes his own blood. So it's actually the taste he's getting from eating those twigs are not the twigs, it's his own blood. So therefore, Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas, they say sex is meant for sucking one's own blood. In other words, you're wasting your own vital energy by engaging in illicit sexual activities. Then Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 4th chapter, 20th verse. Sex life in mundane world is the root cause of being shackled by illusion. Whoa. Sex life in the mundane world is the root cause of being shackled by illusion. And then Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 6th chapter, 20th verse. The highest benefit from being is to be free of sex life and its attachment. The highest benefit is to train the human being to be free of sex life and its attachment. Then Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 6th chapter, 8th verse, it says, pleasure-giving substance on the surface of the generative organs. So what enhances the activity of sex is a certain type of substance, a liquid substance that covers the genitalia, and it gives a sensation of some type of euphoria. So, and then it says in Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 17th chapter, 38th verse, in Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 9th chapter, 36th verse, material existence is caused by sense gratification due to sex desire. In spite of advancement of knowledge, the final goal is still sense gratification. And then Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 5th chapter, 42nd verse, which is what we're reading today, it says, the most stubborn attachment for material enjoyment is sex life. One who is attached to sex life is devoid of knowledge. Okay, so these are pretty hard statements for most people to hear because almost everyone is overwhelmed by this desire for sense gratification. However, there is a much greater happiness, pleasure, ecstasy, and peace by giving up this false attachment to domination, controlling nature, controlling people, which is impossible. You might do it for a little while, but you will eventually lose. As compared to surrendering to Krishna and engaging in loving devotion for the Lord. By surrendering, you become independent. What does that mean? Not independent from Krishna, you become more dependent on Krishna, but independent from the influences of Maya. So real independence is becoming free from the influences of Maya. That's what happens when you surrender to Krishna. So some people say, well, how can I be independent if I surrender? Well, yeah, if you surrender to Putin or Zelensky, yeah, you'll be miserable. But if you surrender to Krishna, then you're free from Maya. So that is a different, let's call it, culture. The culture of surrender for being independent. Not from Krishna, you become more dependent on Krishna, but independent from illusion and wasting your time in the material world, wasting your life's energy by engaging in sense gratification, and wasting your time always worrying. The material world is full of anxiety, worry, because nobody knows what's going to happen next, right? It's just like oftentimes mothers are always worrying, oh, how's my son? Oh, how's my daughter? We left them with the babysitter. Oh, but maybe the babysitter is a bad person. So there's 1,000 times a day that a mother is worrying about her child, and the father also sometimes, because I remember one time I got on an airplane to go to India, and I met a friend of mine who was on the same airport, and he said to me, oh, I'm glad you're on this flight. I said, why? He said, well, that means it won't crash because you're on the flight. I said, how do you know that? He said, no, if you're on the flight, it won't crash. I feel very safe now. So you see, everybody's worrying. Everybody's like, me too. I'm also worrying. He's on the flight. That might be the cause of the crash. Because he's a sinner. So everybody's worried, right? Okay, so so we see what is the real problem, and this is explained also that the real cause of why we came to the material world is because of being attached, of being attracted to sex life. We didn't come to eat meat. We didn't come to gamble. We didn't come to uh, gamble, eat meat, or any of those other things. We came basically because we're attached to sense gratification. And how do we get attached? We had some kind of vision of the material world from the edge of the spiritual world. When you come to the edge of something, you see something else, right? So those people who are in the spiritual world who come closer to the edge of the material world, the spiritual world, they begin to see some things in the material world and it looks attractive. The grass is always greener on the other field or the other mountain, see? So, and this is exactly why, for example, people go to Broadway in New York or to Las Vegas or to casinos because there's a lot of lights and everything looks really nice, you see. There was one man, he saw this advertisement on a very big billboard. You have these big billboards in America and in India, right? So there was a very big billboard that said, "Go to hell and be happy." And there was a picture of, it looked like Hawaii, right? And people were on the beach and they're having a great time. So, and it says, "Free." So this one man said, it's free. Whenever something is free, people take a look at it, right? So he went, he pulled up that page on the internet, and it looked like, heaven, right? So he signed up to go to hell. So he goes and takes the elevator down, and when it gets to hell, the elevator door opens, and the two demons there, they grab him and start beating him up like this. He said, "Hey, what's going on here?" They said, "What do you mean?" "Well, this is supposed to be heaven. It's supposed to be like nectar." He said, "That's the advertisement. This is the reality." So you see, there's all this publicity that you see on billboards and all over the place. They're mostly misconceiving. They're just hype, or just propaganda, or just false, let's say, attraction to something that entices you. And this is what advertisement is. There's advertisements on the internet now, unbelievable advertisements promising all kinds of things, right? And they've been there forever. In the 1850s, 1890s, there were people who were selling snake oil. What's snake oil? It's a bottle, and that bottle contains the liquid in it, and then there's a guy talking, right? Of course, they didn't have microphones, they didn't have internet, and so they would travel from town to town, village to village. They would in a wagon, right? And they would sell the snake oil. They call it snake oil because it could cure every disease in the world, and it was very entertaining for the people because the person speaking would speak real fast and he'd move around and he'd say things and he'd promise this and promise that, and eventually they would all line up to buy the snake oil, and they'd take it home and take it thinking this is going to heal every disease in the world, right? That's where it comes from. It's a snake oil. It's poison with a label of nectar. You see, that's why they called it snake oil. So we see this is going on today. It's much more sophisticated snake oil, but it's the same thing. There's this advertisement all the time now, all kinds of different advertisements that are promising, euphoria, freedom from sickness, you'll never die, this thing, that thing. You'll make millions of dollars overnight without using your money. All these nonsense things, and people are getting caught up by it, and it wastes their time and energy. And eventually, they are exploited. One time, a man heard this proverb that money attracts money. So he said, So he tried to test it out. He went to a bank, and one teller's post was already closed, and the lady was counting her money. She had a large amount of money on the in front of her, and this man came and looked. He saw that there was a large amount of money there, so he threw $1 that he had over the counter into the pile of money, and he stood there waiting. And eventually the lady said, "Sir, what's the matter? Why are you looking here?" He said, "Oh, I'm waiting." She said, "What are you waiting for?" "Well, I heard that money attracts money, so I'm waiting. I put some money in your pile waiting for it to come back to me." She said, "No, money does attract money. My money attracted your money." So you see, people get confused by all these, so-called punchlines or special statements that people make with promises, but people don't understand actually what it means. It means that always the money is going to leave your pocket and go to their pocket. That's what it actually means. Okay. So then, Prabhupada writes, and we read this a lot before. We'll read it again because it's very important. And on a morning walk on October 18th, 1975, in Johannesburg, a devotee said, "What is the advance?" Prabhupada said, he asked the question, said to the devotee, said, "What is the advancement of knowledge?" And one devotee answered, "They are increasing sex life, and actually the advancement of knowledge should be decreasing sex life." Prabhupada, yes, they do not know what is knowledge. Their knowledge means sex life. That is their knowledge. Advancement of knowledge means how to enjoy sex life, how to take shelter of abortion, child killing, and then contraceptive method. Whole thing on the basis of sex life. That's all. They do not know except these things. They know there is botheration after sex life, but they cannot give it up. Therefore, all these arrangements are made. Take contraceptive, kill the child. That means the whole thing is based on sex life. That's all. Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukam hitucham. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.45. Is that pleasure? They think it is pleasure to unite the urinals. Everybody laughs. And this is pleasure? A standard of pleasure? Most third class, fourth class. Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukam tucham hitucham. Very abominable. Tucham means very abominable. The Shastra says most abominable. And they take it as pleasure. And they make arrangements for this. When the dog enjoys sex life, therefore they are allowed to do it in the street. People can see it. It is a very nice scene. Is it a very nice scene? No. The same thing is done by the human being. This is all. This is the basic principle of their happiness. That's all. Mohini means illusion, deception by false beauty or false this or that. This is the captivation or the imprisonment. And nature has made woman's face so attractive, beautiful, their breasts, their hips attractive, their sound, talking, singing, all very attractive, walking, and now they are dressed naked. They are showing simply the vagina, all other parts of the body clothed. This is going on. Whole thing is based on sex life, and that is tucham, most abominable. Pakritim mohinim shrita. That's 9th chapter, 12th verse of Bhagavad Gita. They're completely an illusion. It will take 300 times births to understand that this sex life is abominable. Therefore, it is bahunam janmanam ante. After many, many births and deaths, one may come to the realization that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Krishna, you are everything for me. But it could take many, many births and deaths of speculation and going down the wrong pathway of thinking that material sense gratification is the goal of life. Not that immediately, simply by hearing our Bhagavad Gita lecture, they will give it up. It will take many, many births to understand Bahunam Janmanam Ante. So in other words, it's not like very irregular hearing that one's going to lose the desire for this sense gratification. It's regulated hearing every day. Every day. Every day. Then gradually that strong attraction will go away and one will develop a strong attraction to Krishna. It may take many, many births to understand Janmanamante. In the Vedic system, sex life is allowed only for begetting children. Therefore, there's restriction. It's allowed, but with great restriction under religious rules and regulations and so many things, such as Garbhodana, Samskar. Then the first principle is, even if it is taken for begetting a child, it is not secret. So now he's going to explain the Vedic system. He says, Garbhodana Samskar. There should be a function. In other words, there should be a ceremony. All the brahmanas and relatives should come, and there will be ceremony. And everyone will know that this man is going to now have sex for begetting children. This is a ceremony, not secretly like cats and dogs. Cats and dogs also they do it in public, but human beings do it secretly and do not want the botheration. They do it secretly, and then they don't want the botheration of having a child, so they engage in killing children or taking pills or something to stop the pregnancy. Therefore, their scientific advancement means how to kill the child, how to make abortion, how to take contraceptive pills, how to distribute them, how to basically destroy the children. Yes, you go on, but take these pills so that you may not be bothered. Yes. Why not stop it? Why not stop this botheration? That you cannot do by contraception because you become worse than an animal. Because animal civilization, they cannot do it. Kandutiv mani vasi vishaheta dirak. Why don't you teach them to become dira, sober? Let me tolerate this itching sensation for sense gratification. Let me take up brahmacharya or brahmacharini life. That teaching is not good. You do it repeatedly and you suffer the consequences repeatedly. And to stop it, they suffer in so many ways. Suffering. Bahuduka Bhaja. Srimad Bhagavatam 7:9-45. So, they're suffering how? They can't stop having sense gratification, and following the sense gratification, there's always misery. And then there's anxiety. Oh, am I pregnant? Am I not pregnant? Oh, are we going to have another child? Oh, it's going to take 25, 30 years to get free of the child, blah, 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 blah. There's always worry. There's always anxiety. So you do it repeatedly, and you suffer the consequences. And to stop it, they suffer in so many ways. Suffering. Sex life, illicit or legal, the after effect is suffering. Even if it is not illicit, it is legal, then to take care of the wife or the children for their education, for their upliftment, and so on. Suffering. And if it is illicit, then these sufferings, you commit sinful activities, kill the child, contraceptive, with abortion, go to the doctor, pay, and so on. So where is no suffering, either legal or illegal or illicit, you have to suffer. Bahuduka Bhaja. Tripyanti neha kripana bahuduka Bhaja. These rascals, once they have done, that's all right, you have got one child. Just take care of it. No, again and again. Once you have committed sinful activities, killing a child in the womb, all right, stop it now. No, again. Tripyanti neha kripana. He's never satisfied. He knows that there is suffering behind this. Still, he'll not stop it. Therefore, a sober man, a man should be educated to become sober, and let me tolerate this itching. That's all. I save so much trouble. This is knowledge. To become rascal and more rascal and more rascal and suffer, is that civilization? Simply to make the people rascal and suffer and commit suicide? Just tell them that has created this civilization that in which everyone can suffer and become a rascal. That's all. Unless you become rascal, how you will suffer. So keep them rascal and suffering. This is nature's arrangement. You living entity, you have forgotten Krishna. All right, come under my control. Be rascal, remain rascal, and suffer. Daivihi esa gunamayi, mama maya duratyaya. Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Why? She is doing that. Surrender to Krishna. Otherwise, you will go on suffering like this. This is nature's way. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha. Bhagavad Gita 3:27. But the rascal, because he's rascal, he does not know that I am under the full control of Prakriti, of material nature, and Prakriti's business, or her business, is to keep me rascal and suffer, and they are so-called advanced in knowledge. So this is a really heavy statement by Srila Prabhupada. Most people would wince at this. Look at that word up, wince, W-I-N-C-E. Most people would wince at this. Oh, I don't want to hear this. Why is he speaking like that? Blah, blah, blah. But no, Prabhupada is speaking the truth. And therefore, it takes a very brave person to speak the truth, because most people will reject it. What does it say, wince?
Give a slight involuntary grimace.
What?
Give a slight involuntary
Involuntary grimace.
or
Like,
shrinking movement of
like
the
that.
body out of or in anticipation of pain or distress.
Right,
Like he winced at the disgust in her voice. Example sentence.
right. See, most people will wince hearing this type of dialogue from Srila Prabhupada. But no, Prabhupada is speaking the truth. Now, whether we want to accept it or not, that's our choice. But what he's saying is truthful. Now, right now, in this election, especially in Washington State, one of the main points that the Democrats are focusing on is that, the Republicans, if you vote Republican, they'll take a woman's choice away from her. They want to get involved in what can happen to a woman's body. In other words, what they're saying is that Roe versus Wade, in other words, the legalization of abortion, and the government got involved in it for the last 60 years, helping women get free abortions. Right? So that has been partially amended. So now the main thing is that women are joining together all over the United States to overthrow that amendment, to go back to getting free abortions just on demand. So why was it amended? Well, because the Christians, mostly the Christians and others, who believe that life begins at conception, that includes the entire Catholic Church, and other Christian groups, have been militating for years to stop abortion on demand and free abortion. If you want to have an abortion, you have to pay for it yourself, and the government should not be in the business of aborting babies, right? So now there's a big movement to change it back again, to legalize abortion. So you can see, already killing animals is really bad, right? But killing human beings, saying that they're not viable human beings because they can't speak and they don't have a conception of the self yet, that's all nonsense. We know that there's prenatal consciousness in the womb. Prahlad Maharaj was educated while still in the womb of his mother, even though he was born with a body made by Rakshasas. He became a devotee by hearing the discourses of Narada Muni while his mother was protected by him. The demigods were going to kill her, but he protected her and kept her in his ashram and was preaching to her every day about Krishna consciousness. And therefore, Prahlad Maharaj, when he was born, he was already a devotee, although his father is Hiranyakashipu. Okay, so there's plenty of evidence in the Shastra that life begins at the point of conception. And the Catholic Church accepts that also, right? That's one good thing about the Catholic Church. So they've been working 60 years to not annihilate, but change Roe versus Wade, that the American government is giving women free abortions. This should not be involved. The government shouldn't be involved in it. But no, you have so many people fighting now to bring it back. So this is a condemnation of the whole civilization. So, because it's against any good practice. You don't kill your own child. That's a very dangerous thing to do, because the karmic result of that is terrible. And we see that. There's so much violence going on in this country. It's not only because they're killing cows and eating them, it's because of killing children also. And now they've made it legal also in certain states in the United States. You can kill yourself. They're making it legal. They help you commit suicide legally, whereas before that was not allowed either, right? So we see this killing business is the main business of materialists. They love to kill. Look at all these weapons the United States is sending to Ukraine, and look at all the weapons that the Russians are using to kill the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians now are using weapons to kill the Russians. This is the best creation of the demons. How to kill people more faster and in larger quantities, right? They have vaccines, they have guns, they have bombs, all kinds of bombs, they have tanks, they have poison, gas, and so forth. These are their best and most proliferous creations. They've created more weapons of mass destruction than they have of ways to keep people alive. Therefore, we need to wake up and realize that the people in this country and many other countries are on a track of self-destructive behavior. Look at the panel, the self-destruction of overdosing drugs that are legal and illegal, the self-destruction of eating meat. This causes heart attacks and cancer and many other diseases. The self-destruction of gambling, the self-destruction of illicit sex. It's destroying people's lives. We have the statistics. Will people stop? No. Will young kids learn that avoid the four regulative principles? No meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. No. Will our own kids? Well, hopefully yes, but many of them, no. So therefore, this communication of facts is very important. And this hearing of Bhagavatam every day is very important if we want to make a success of this human life. If we want to be a failure, then that's pretty easy. You just sleep in and be lazy and just engage in sense gratification. You ruin your life. But if you want to make an effort to, instead of surrendering to Maya, surrender to Krishna and stop trying to be the dominator and controller, but be the servant and the serving with love and devotion to the Lord, then your life will be successful. So we'll stop right there. This is a very important purport today. We're going over to the second time. I didn't even finish. Did I finish reading the purport? Huh? Yeah, but what we should do for tomorrow, your homework for tomorrow, make an outline of the points in this purport, because this one purport, if you learn this one purport in verse, you got a full grip on Krishna consciousness, right? So the way I do it is usually I'll take the purport and I separate, I make let's say there's two lines making one point. I'll separate that and then make a space below it, and then start the next thought. So you can separate it by these different thoughts: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. There's about 20 major points here in this one short purport. And many of those statements are like proverbial statements, like when it says the most stubborn attachment for material enjoyment is sex life. That's something you can put on your, on the windshield or something, or you can make a sign and put it on the back of your car, and people go, what? What's this crazy stuff? They've got it, just like they have, Biden, Harris, right? So instead of Biden Harris, you can say, the most stubborn attachment for material enjoyment is sex life, or one who is attached to sex life is to be understood as devoid of knowledge. Oh, you put that one. That's a good one, right? They'll read that and say, what? What's this? Where did they get that one from, right? Haribol. So are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Gopal Krishna, Haribol.
Hare Krishna Raj. What does Monday traveling mean?
Mundane? What?
Mundane traveling.
Mundane traveling? Yeah. That means going to places where there's only nonsense going on, right? Like Disneyland, right? Where you see Dumbo and you see Mickey Mouse and you see Bugs Bunny. You don't see Krishna. Is Krishna there? No. You see all these nonsense things, right? And you're basically wasting time and wasting money. It costs a lot of money. You would have to spend probably $100 just to get in there, maybe more than that, right? And then what do you see? You see all these nonsense things, all make-believe things that have no real meaning. So that's mundane traveling, going to places where there's no Krishna consciousness. Okay? Do you want to go somewhere where there's no Krishna consciousness? No. Okay, good. Haribol. I thought you were going to say yes. Any other question? That's a good question, yes.
One question and one comment. You mentioned about all these killing, how men are very attracted to killing and all. And one of the things is that, like, even they train the kids from a very childhood
To
on
kill.
kill. Yeah, all the video games and all that stuff is all about
Killing.
like, bigger bombs that you get as the levels increase in order to kill, and is that kind of stuff. So that's also like just adding to the to the issues. So my question was, can there be love at the bodily conception, or love is only for Krishna? At the bodily level, there's absolutely no love; it's only lust.
Yes. Because what do you love? If you say you love the body, which body do you love? Parents will say, well, I loved that little body that was cuddling, and she or he was so dependent on me, and I can remember that, and I love that. And now you got to be a big person, and they're doing all nonsense, and they never call me anymore. They've more or less forgotten me. So I'm looking for someone else to love now. So when you love the body, it's always changing because the body's always changing, right? When the baby was completely cuddly and completely dependent, the mother was like kissing the baby and hugging it and like that. And now it's some big guy, and he's off here, off there. So it's a different love because the body changed. So, or it could be not love. I don't want to go into all the horrible things that take place in this country, but oftentimes when the child grows up, they become like a monster, and they kill their own parents sometimes. So what does that mean, loving the body? It's always going to be changing because the body is always changing. Whereas love Krishna, his body never changes. It's always young, beautiful, full of ecstasy. You see? So if you're going to love somebody, love Krishna's transcendental body, Satchitananda Vigraha. It'll never let you down. But love somebody's body, eventually their body's going to become old and decrepit, and it's not a nice thing to see. I remember when my father got cancer. It It took him 9 months to die. It was horrible. Very, very stressful to see how a person's body just deteriorates and eventually is completely helpless. One time I saw my father, we were having dinner, and he just started crying because, he was very sick. He could hardly even eat, and he just started crying. And I didn't understand why. I was too young. But later on I thought about it, and I said, yeah, that can happen to anyone when they see that they can't function anymore. They can't even go to the bathroom by themselves, right? And they're completely dependent. Whereas before they were strong, they were able to do things and provide for the family. And now they're completely incapacitated. See? So loving the body is a very strange thing. Very strange thing. It's not recommended. Love the soul, yes, and its relationship to Krishna, but love the body, no, it's very, very tenuous. Tenuous meaning chanchal. Right. Okay, we'll stop right there. Hare Krishna.
There is one question online.
Yeah, good.
They ask, like, does abortion based on physical disorder of the baby or miscarriage, is this considered as an abominable act?
Yes. I'll give you an example. One of my daughters got pregnant, with her husband, right? And she got sick, and she went to the hospital, and the hospital doctors, they also recommended that they abort the baby because they said there's like 98% chance that the child is going to be born deformed. So my daughter called me. She was in India. She calls me from India, and she tells me this, and she says, what should I do, Dad? I said, well, you're living in Mayapur. It's a holy place. Lord Chaitanya is there, and Krishna is there. You just pray to them. She said, really? The doctors are saying I should abort the baby. The baby's going to be born deformed. I said, well, I think you should just depend on Krishna and just accept whatever happens. So she said, all right. So when she had the baby, it was perfectly okay. But the doctors tried to convince her, and even her friends and other devotees tried to convince her to abort the baby. Right. So ultimately, if you don't have Krishna in your life, you're in trouble. But if you have Krishna in your life, you accept whatever Krishna is going to give you. Just like yesterday someone said to me, Prabhu, today it's going to be a little cold, I don't think we'll sell any ice cream or lemonade. I said, listen, let's not worry about the weather. Leave the weather up to Krishna. That's his business. Our business is to do our best to spread Krishna consciousness, whether it's raining or not raining, whether we make money or we don't make money. It doesn't matter. We should just focus on what we're supposed to do. And let Krishna take care of the rain or the snow or the blizzard or sun or whatever. So, yeah, this is what they do. They take an exceptional case to make the point, right? Now, how many kids are going to be born deformed? Well, there's some, but most kids are not going to be born deformed, right? So just because there may be a few that are deformed, they want to change the law and make abortion free for everyone, whether the kid is deformed or not deformed. This is nonsense, right? And if the child is born deformed, well, you take responsibility. That's all. What can you do, right? What if the child is born perfectly well, and then later on they get deformed through an accident or some serious disease like polio or something? Polio, you can be born perfectly well, and you get polio, you get paralyzed for the rest of your life, right? And that happened a lot. So you can't predict things, and we should not try and control nature by artificial means. We should let Krishna. Krishna is controlling nature, is controlling us. So we should depend completely on Krishna, and whatever happens, accept it as Krishna's mercy, and and accept responsibility. If you're going to have a child, you have to accept responsibility. Right? You can't say, no, I'm not going to accept the responsibility. I'm going to abort the child. That's sinful. So what if that happened to you, right? What if they aborted you? Right? So we should just depend on Krishna. That's Krishna consciousness. Now, if my daughter listened to what everyone told her, including devotees, she would have aborted the child. Right? And God forbid she didn't do that. She didn't do that. And the child is very, very healthy and good and a wonderful little boy. Yeah. Haribol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, one follow-up question, Maharaj. As you have mentioned, it's very difficult to see when body is deteriorating, and so how a neophyte can tolerate that, because that happens, this will happen almost to everyone to see like this.
Well, in case of my father, he was not Krishna conscious at all, right? And his body was deteriorating because he had very bad habits. He did it to himself. No one else did anything to him. He did it to himself. And in the end, because he got cancer, he chose to go to the doctor, and what did they do to him? They burned his body. This is in the 1950s, when they used radiation. Most of the people died from that radiation because, they were burning their body. And he walked to the hospital, and they had to carry him back. And he suffered 9 months terribly. Well, it's good that he suffered, actually, because when you die after suffering terribly like that, most of your sinful reactions are gone, because you don't have to suffer after death. You suffered in life, terribly. So it was my father's fault because he had bad habits. Right? And so what can you do? I mean, and I didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness at that time. I was only 8 or 9 years old. So, and my mother and my brothers, they didn't know what to do. They just went along with whatever was happening. And the doctors, they were just doing what they were taught to do, burn someone with radiation. So it's a very sad situation. It's all based on ignorance. But the good news is the soul is eternal. And the good news is if the son or daughter becomes a pure devotee, then you can save 21 generations of your family. So that's the good news. That's what we should focus on. Look at Srila Prabhupada. His body deteriorated, right? But he didn't give up Krishna consciousness, right? It didn't stop him. Right up to almost the last moment, the last breath he had, he was still translating Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So that's another thing. See, that's the flip side. If you're completely Krishna conscious, then you're not affected. There was a whole thing I had to discuss today, but I didn't have the time. This detachment is something that's extremely important. Detachment from the bodily concept of life. Not detachment from Krishna, but detachment from the bodily concept of life. Then you go through life very peacefully, and you're not disturbed by all these things that can happen. Accidents, sickness or whatever. So we'll discuss that tomorrow. Go ahead. Who's going to chant? You want to chant, Prabhu? Good.
Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakar Mati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bandha Moi Savadana Mate
Bandhu Mui Savadana Mate
Bandha Moi Savadana Mate
Mui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bai E Baba Toriya Jai
Janara Prasade Mai E Baba Toriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya Akya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Goriya
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Je Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
He Prasade Bune Sarvasa
Je Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
He Prasade Bune Sarvasa
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
Sakshudan Dila Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
Sakshudan Dila Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
दिव्य जान हृदय प्रकाशितो
Divya Gani De Prakasito
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जयते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जयते
Bhakti Chaha Hoite Abhidya Vinasa Jate
वेद ज्ञाय जहाँ चरितो वेद ज्ञाय जहाँ चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु
Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना
Lokera Jivana
लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना
Lokera Jivana
हाँ हाँ प्रभु को रो
daya deho more padachaya.
Prabhu koro daya deho more padachaya.
Prabhu koro daya deho more padachaya.
Prabhu koro daya deho more padachaya.
Ebe jas dushu tribhuvana. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana.
Prabhupada Patita Pavana.
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandradhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandradhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jayo Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe.
Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe.
Jayo Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe.
Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe.
Jayo Jagannath, Jayo Jagannath, Jai Baladeva, Jayo Subhadra.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha, Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha, Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha, Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha. Jayo Sitaram, Jayo Sitaram, Jayo Sitaram, Jayo Lakshmana Hanuman. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada. Jayo Jayo Gurudev, 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 Jayo Jayo Gurudev.
Jaya Vishnupad, Paramahansa Pararajagatara, Shri Shishimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samavita Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhuti Smata Bhakti Smata Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Vichari Devi Sisi Sunyavani Bhaskara. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain to pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavan Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Shrimati Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pujari.